Let's imagine for a second that you've just unlocked the ultimate cheat code, immortality, or at least something close. Not 100 years, not 200, but a full 1,000 years of life. What would actually happen to you, to society, and to the world around you? Let's break it down. The first 100 years. The easy part. At first, everything seems normal. You're basically living like everyone else. You go to school, make some bad choices in your 20s, and hopefully figure things out by your 30s. The difference? You're not rushing. While your friends are stressing about mortgages and retirement plans, you're thinking, relax. I've got 9 more centuries to figure this out. By the time you hit your first century, you look like a normal 50-year-old. Because you're old, because your body would age so slowly, it would barely keep up with the calendar. At 100, you'd still be healthy, strong, and probably a little smug about outliving your high school bullies. The second 100 years, outliving everyone. Now it gets complicated. By year 200, you've already buried your friends, your kids, your grandkids, and possibly even your great-grandkids. Imagine explaining to strangers that you're still around because you just don't die. At this stage, you'd either become a wandering hermit, constantly moving to avoid suspicion, or you try to live openly, probably ending up as a government science experiment. After all, if the world knows you can live for a millennium, you can bet someone in a lab coat will want to take you apart like a Lego set. The third 100 years, the knowledge era. By year 300, you've stopped caring about family drama because everyone you knew is long gone. Instead, you're diving headfirst into education. Why stop at 1 degree when you have time for 50? You could master medicine, law, astrophysics, and still have centuries left to pick up pottery or interpretive dance. The terrifying part? With that much knowledge, you'd make everyone else look like amateurs. Imagine trying to explain to a college professor that you actually studied under their great teacher. Awkward. Year 400 to 500, the curse of memory. Here's where immortality starts to hurt. The human brain isn't built to store centuries of memories. Sure, you'd remember big events, but what about the small ones? Birthdays, names, faces, you'd eventually start losing them. By year 500, your brain would be a cluttered attic, full of dusty memories you can't quite place. Did you fight in that war, or did you just read about it? Did you love that person, or was it just a story someone told you? The line between memory and history would blur, and that alone could drive you insane. Year 600 to 700, watching civilizations rise and fall. This is where things get really terrifying. Over centuries, you'd watch empires collapse, borders change, and entire cultures vanish. You'd see technology advance at a pace no one else could comprehend. Remember how your grandparents struggle with smartphones? Try explaining TikTok to someone who remembers the Crusades. At this point, you'd either become a prophet or a recluse. People would see you as a living archive, a walking history book. But the downside, you'd also carry the trauma of centuries, wars, plagues, genocides, all burned into your memory. That weight alone would crush most people. By now, you've seen countless generations live and die. Everyone else is worried about their careers or families, while you're worried about how to pretend you haven't been alive since the Renaissance. You'd start to feel like an alien among humans, familiar with their habits, but never truly belonging. Relationships would become nearly impossible. Imagine dating and having to casually mention, oh yeah, I've actually been married 6 times already in the 1500s. Even if you kept the truth a secret, you'd constantly outlive your partners, leaving behind trails of heartbreak and suspicion. The loneliness of immortality wouldn't just be sad, it would be crushing. At some point, you might even stop forming connections at all, just to avoid the pain of losing people. Year 800 to 900, the Superhuman Era. On the flip side, by now you'd be more than human. With centuries of experience, you'd have skills that no one else on Earth could rival. Languages, you'd speak dozens fluently. Professions, you'd probably have mastered half of them. Investments, if you had just bought land in year 1200 and held on to it, you'd be wealthier than entire nations. But there's a downside. People would notice. Either you'd live in total secrecy, changing your identity every few decades, or you'd emerge as a godlike figure, worship or feared for your knowledge. The more society advanced, the harder it would be to hide. At some point, you'd have to decide, stay in the shadows, or take the spotlight and deal with the consequences. Year 900 to 1000, the Endgame. Finally, you hit the 1,000-year mark. You've seen wars, plagues, revolutions, and space exploration. You've outlasted empires, religions, and entire civilizations. At this point, you're not just human, you're living history. But here's the terrifying twist. What if you still weren't done? What if 1,000 years was just the beginning? Would you crave more time, or would you beg for an ending? Immortality might sound like a gift, but after watching humanity repeat the same mistakes for centuries, it might feel more like a curse. The psychological breakdown. The scariest part of living for 1,000 years wouldn't be physical. It would be mental. The boredom, the loneliness, the endless repetition. You'd watch fashion trends cycle endlessly, music genres reinvent themselves, and wars break out for the same reasons over and over again. At some point, you'd realize history doesn't move forward, it just loops, and you'd be stuck in the loop forever. So what if you lived for 1,000 years? At first, it would be thrilling time to learn, time to explore, time to build. But as the centuries stacked up, the excitement would fade into alienation, memory loss, and unbearable loneliness. Immortality isn't about what you gain, it's about what you lose. And maybe that's the most terrifying part of all. Because in the end, life isn't meaningful because it lasts forever. It's meaningful because it doesn't.